Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Pleasantville Forward Together Community Forum. As president of the Board of Education, let me say that it is truly wonderful to see so many of you here tonight. Seriously, thank you for coming out. I know it's a Monday night and you could be home in your pajamas enjoying a peaceful night at home, but you chose to be here. Or maybe your kids are just losing it over where their favorite sweatshirt went, and this felt like the more peaceful option. Spoiler, no one stole it from the dryer. It's likely on the fence at one of our schools. Either way, we're glad you're here. First, I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to everyone who has dedicated countless hours to this project. Special thanks to Dr. Latinsky, John Chow, Donna Vitucci, and our communications team for their tireless efforts. You've probably seen their work everywhere. In fact, if you've tried to avoid our mailings, emails, and flyers, you know it's virtually impossible. I'd also like to recognize our incredible administrators, business office, facilities teams, as well as our partners at the Village, including our amazing police force and, of course, all of our teachers. To my colleagues on the Board of Education, thank you for your commitment. I know you've spent countless hours in public meetings, forums, and committee meetings poring over every detail of this project. And last but certainly not least, to all the community members who have volunteered their time and efforts as part of the CFC, helping to educate, refine, and guide the district, and all those who have taken the time to attend these meetings and share their knowledge. Thank you for participating in this process. And for those of you joining us on the live stream, thank you too. We may be jealous that you're in sweatpants with snacks at the ready, but we're grateful you made the time to tune in and be part of the conversation. Your collective engagement and effort are what make our school district and community so special. The discourse, discussion, engagement, and sometimes disagreement is a bright example for our children. It's easy when everybody is in agreement, but the best results are often forged through debate. The respectful way we come together for these discussions is a testament to our community, and it is my hope that it will yield something that we can all be proud of. Let's hold on to that. We may disagree, but we're all here tonight with the best intentions. So what are those intentions? This forum is a great reminder that while we may come from different backgrounds and have different ideas, we're all united by a single powerful purpose, doing what's best for our children. This should guide us above all else. This is the very essence of being student-centered. Everything we do, every decision we make is with our students' needs and success in mind. It's about ensuring that they have the best possible environment to learn, grow, and thrive. Our Pleasantville Forward Together initiative is more than just a capital project. It's a statement about who we are as a community. It's about being future-focused, developing facilities that will serve generations to come. Some of our current facilities haven't been upgraded in over 2 decades, and frankly, it's showing. Our facility staff does an absolutely amazing job, but after 20 years, some things need to be rethought. And let's not forget this entire effort is community guided. As board members, we spend a lot of time discussing the issues facing our schools. We know many of you don't have the time to attend every meeting, read every agenda, spend hours every week reviewing these issues. Well, we've been discussing a version of this project for over 1.5 years now. Some of you may only be learning about it right now. We're working on that. We're sending out mailings, using new technology, being available after meetings, attending community events, and even going door to door. Based on the increased engagement from the community, I believe it's working. Countless community members are participating, digging into the materials, and working together to find the best solutions. If it's not working and you still have questions, please reach out. Come to a meeting, email a member, grab us after the forum or during the meeting. Why spend all this time and effort? Because our schools are more than just buildings with classrooms. They're the heart of our community. They're where friendships are formed, where futures are shaped, and where the next generation of leaders, artists, and innovators gets its start. Our facilities also aren't just for the students during the school day. They're gathering places for all of us, from our village recreational sports leagues to sold-out musicals, adult leagues, science competitions, chorus and orchestra concerts, and art installations. When we invest in our schools, we're investing in everyone because a strong school district creates a strong community. Now for a quick overview of what to expect tonight. We'll start with a brief overview of what we've learned from our prior proposed capital project, and then we'll look at improved communication efforts. Then we'll hear from representatives from the CFC and each of the subcommittees. After that, we will discuss budgeting, timing, and next steps. Along the way, we're going to pause for questions and comments after each committee speaks. During these discussion periods, our normal rules for public comment will apply, slightly modified. As I'm sure everyone is eager to get started, I'll give everyone a refresher on those rules when we get to that portion of the meeting. With that, thank you again for being here, and let's get started. Great. Just making sure we're on the right slide. So the first lessons learned from the original community project was that we had to do a much better job communicating. We've spent a lot of time and effort, looked at a lot of different programs, reached out to a lot of different groups, and I think we're reaching more and more people. We're sending out flyers, more emails. We're using Parent Square, not Parrot Square. We're looking for additional opportunities to engage with the public, both through different student organizations, parent organizations, community groups. And we're also relooking at the project in its entirety and making sure that it's balanced, both from an athletic facilities position, but also from an academic, arts, and science perspective. The purpose of all of this is to demonstrate the transparency. As I mentioned, as board members, we spend a lot of time going over these materials, and sometimes it's hard to remember that not everybody has the familiarity with these things that we do. Sometimes that results in us not appearing to be as transparent because we're jumping to the conclusion because we've been through all of the materials time and time again. We understand that that's not the way that we need to do things, and so we're trying to make a concerted effort walking everybody through the knowledge base that we've built up over an extended period of time. Dr. Wititsky, anything to add? On the lessons.
Lesson 1, turn your microphone on. Thank you, Mr. Chow. I think the lessons are in great part how you started this meeting off, looking at some things that we reflected on. So looking back at the previous project, the needs of the district still exist, but this capital project approaches them differently to be responsive to the lessons we learned. We created the Community Facilities Committee to take a more deliberate, inclusive look at how to address our needs, and the CFC subcommittees were a further step. There will be future community forums, the next in November, for a closer look at the specific elements of this project. And of course, there will be a capital project in pretty much every Board of Education meeting we'll have from here on in. Because this capital project is a district-wide event, we're taking a district-wide approach to communication, featuring both traditional and more contemporary methods of sharing information. Social media, website posts, and our new Parent Square are effective ways to reach residents, but we still take advantage of mailings, personal local appearances, and of course, everyone is welcome to participate at every Board of Education meeting and community forum. Our capital project, like all of them, are opportunities to take the chance to make improvements in what we can do beyond what a typical annual operating budget can do. This committee was constructed with depth and breadth in mind, with representatives from a variety of groups and flexibility for each subcommittee to look different. Each subcommittee has its own mix of representatives from each group. And if you look at this graphic here, I think it really represents the flexibility each committee has, because they're all different and they all have varying degrees of board involvement, expert involvement, community involvement, student involvement, admin involvement, teacher involvement. And it's a flexible way of looking at each one of our needs. So the latest capital project's name, therefore, emphasizes our cooperative approach, Pleasantville Forward Together. Pleasantville Forward Together is definitively future-focused, student-centered, and community-guided. Pleasantville Forward Together has 4 main components. The first is a set of infrastructure needs that we agree have to be taken care of sooner rather than later. We'll look at each of those in the next slide. The other 3 components have been the work of our CFC. The various contributing stakeholders to each subcommittee have been collaborating on how to define each and how the needs of the district can be met. The why, or the essential questions, are: at BRS, how can we reconfigure the exterior space to meet the varied needs of PE classes, recess, camp, and community? For STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, how can we enhance our buildings to provide superior cross-curricular instruction to prepare students for their future? And for fields and lights, how can we improve the experience of our athletes and meet the needs of our teams with safety and limited space in mind? So here are those expedited items that we talked about that have to be done sooner rather than later. So after the previous capital project, there was broad agreement on certain needs that had to be addressed. To make the best use of our time, the Board of Education recently approved our district architect to initiate the planning process for these key infrastructure items, including district-wide improvements to our public address system and our lockdown system, new cooling units at BRS, new hot water pumps at the high school, and electric and lighting upgrades in this room, the high school auditorium. In this way, all pre-planning will be complete so that project work can begin right away if the community approves in May. And now we'll take a look at BRS. Lucas Cascardo.
To provide a little background on the BRS outdoor space for those not familiar who weren't here at July meeting, it's approximately 55,000 square feet, a fenced-in recreation area consisting of a playground, a basketball court, and turf field with ample amounts of asphalt. Less than 2% of the current space is dedicated to natural landscape and shading. This space is not only used for school-related activities, but by the village, who use a space for after-school Panther Club, as well as summer camp programming. It's also open to the public during times outside of scheduled activities. The current programming of the space has remained relatively unchanged since its construction over 20 years ago. The initial design intent had this space truly activated, with various programs, separate provisions for activities for K through 1, as well as older students 2 through 4. With this in mind, our proposal is to capture the design intention that was set aside almost 25 years ago and make the space live up to its potential. Since our last meeting in July, we have had the subcommittee and administration engaged with various stakeholders, such as the Village Recreation Department, the Village Police, as well as security consultants. Furthermore, we've met with a playground vendor to develop pricing for components. Our next step, now that school has started, we are preparing to meet with students to discuss their concerns, as well as continuing to engage the community and staff to refine design proposals, which take into account the various activities of the space that the space is used for, as well as consideration for safety and security improvements.
So we're going to offer the opportunity for questions after each of our subcommittee. With that explanation of what we've been doing at BRS, would anyone like to come up and ask questions, comment, or offer recommendations on our BRS space? One, two. You're going to have to go this way so that you can avoid the courts.
So we're going to break up the comments after each subcommittee, but that doesn't mean if you think of something at the end, there'll be an additional opportunity to ask questions about any of the portions. We just wanted to make sure that we were addressing things timely when people were thinking about it after hearing the presentation. As I mentioned, we're going to follow the rules for public comment modified slightly. So I have to read them now. It's the practice of the Pleasantville Board of Education to allow for public expression during recognition of audience in accordance with District Policy 1510. Interested school district members and district residents are asked to state their name and address and direct their comments to all members of the board. As a reminder, public comments shall be limited to 5 minutes. After all those wishing to offer public comment have done so, those who would like to offer additional comments may do so at the discretion of the board president, provided no single person shall exceed 10 minutes during any one meeting. Comments either neutral, positive, or negative relating to specific individuals will not be permitted. Complaints about school personnel, students, and school matters should be made in accordance with District Policy 3230. All speakers are expected to conduct themselves in a respectful and courteous manner. The public comment period is intended to allow for school district members, residents to present commentary to the board. As no individual member of the Board of Education can act independently, responses to questions or comments in most cases are not possible, but the board will take comments under consideration. Questions asked will be considered by the board or referred to the superintendent as applicable for consideration response. We are going to modify that, so I'm going to give you 10 minutes, up to 10 minutes. For your initial comments, we may ask you to stay and ask questions. That doesn't count against your time. We'll allow you to respond to our questions and comments that we may have. It's going to be a little bit more of a back and forth, assuming that there are things that we can answer. So with that being said, welcome.
Thank you. Jennifer Resnick, 3 Foster Place. Mine does overlap a little bit with the next committee, I think, but relates to BRS. So as you guys up here already know, I'm against having turf fields at our schools. My main concern with it is the millions of microplastics that are going into our community and to some extent our children's bodies. I may have said it here at the last community forum, I don't remember, but the quote that has stuck with me the most from a few years ago from my son is, "It's the worst when they get in your mouth." I know people like to talk about how the infill, I think at the high school, is made of coconut, but the green fake grass part of the turf at both the high school and PRS is plastic. And those little bits of green plastic are everywhere. I can tell when one of my kids at BRS or at the high school loses a shoe at recess because that sock will come home coated in green plastic pieces. Thousands of them coated our portable soccer goals I used to take when I coached pre-K soccer at BRS. I find them all over our house, on the floor, coating their lined Crocs, in the washing machine, in the shower, stuck to every pair of their winter gloves. You may have seen the study that came out earlier this year that there's a plastic spoon's worth of plastic in our brains on average, which is a 50% increase in just the last 8 years. In addition to the microplastic issue, injuries are also more common on turf. There was an NFL study of 4,800 injuries that showed a 16% higher injury rate on turf. Most studies have been done for college or professional sports, but the only study I could find on high school athletes showed a 58% higher rate of injuries on turf. I know that field availability is a big issue in Pleasantville, but I think the health of our children is more important, especially when there are a lot of other heavily used fields like Soldiers and Sailors and Parkway that are grass. So I recognize that it would be a big ask to remove all the turf in the school district. I think the most realistic places to focus on are 1, to not turf any new grass fields, and 2, BRS. Since the whole BRS playground needs to be redone anyway, rather than replacing the turf, I think the playground should be redesigned without any turf or other problematic playing surfaces. Our youngest kids are the most vulnerable to impacts from plastic and they're still developing bodies. I hope that you will consider these 2 things as a compromise. I would also like to know what the district does to maintain the turf, including anything it does or plans to do to minimize the shedding of microplastics. And if this is posted online anywhere, that would be great. I couldn't find it. And as a small aside, not related to the turf, I also hope that the BRS playground, you guys will consider having 2 sets of hoops, 1 taller one and 1 smaller one, so that BRS kids, little kids, can actually play on the hoops at their own school. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll turn this over to Lucas, who's been talking about this and viewing it more, but it is something that we're obviously listening to and focused on. We're trying to balance, and feel free to jump in and correct me if I'm wrong. We're trying to balance availability of fields, limited space, maintenance costs, but also respect and have more outdoor natural space. I think that was one of the things when we took a look at BRS initially and imagined what it could be. I think all of us sort of looked at it and said having more green, more versatile space would be more ideal. And I think that's evolving and yeah.
And then I think, jumping on that, the adding green space, but also respecting conditions that the school has to maintain. And part of that, I know that, with green surfacing and mulch and dirt and things like that, is that you limit use of space in inclement weather as well as, for example, snow. where those areas have to be cleaned and it presents a challenge. So we're looking at options that would allow us to have that, but also maintain use of that area throughout the entire school year.
You can respond back if you like.
That's okay. I mean, I understand the whole availability of fields thing. Like sometimes my kids' practices get canceled at Soldiers and Sailors, if it rains too much. But as a mom, I'd rather have a practice canceled or them play inside a day than have them playing on plastic every day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike, I know we didn't get to the maintenance question, but maybe that's when we can come back to when just to acknowledge.
We'll definitely have the
Director of
knowledge.
Facilities is here.
We have a second hand raised.
Hi, my name is Joanne Carol Homlish. I live on Ashland Avenue. That's a tough act to follow as far as Bedford Road School. I only have a comment. I would love to see a plan before anything happens. And I haven't seen a comprehensive plan as to actual layout of a new school playground at Bedford Road School. Because of that, I am very concerned, having 3 grandchildren there now and a 4th one coming. I have a lot invested in that school. I would love to see, and I don't know because I haven't seen any plans, more seating area for children. I'd love to see more raised beds where greenery can be put, where children can dig in the dirt, because I also do not believe that children should be playing on plastic. I think our world is full of just too much plastic as it is. But I think there are ways to mitigate how much they're exposed to at the schools. So I'd love to see, again, a full comprehensive layout of what plans are going to be considered. And I would really like to see a lot more greenery and places for children just to sit. Sometimes you don't want to get up and play. Sometimes you just need to sit outside. So that's my only comment. Thank you.
Oh, and that was one of the items that was brought up with administration, was the availability of soft surfaces to sit, to gather, to play games that are not, it doesn't have anything to do with playgrounds, but also just, their activities outside of that.
Maybe talk a little bit about, if you feel comfortable, about the original plan.
I mean, I have a small copy of the original plan of what the school was supposed to be, the recreation area. A lot of these items were left up to the school to implement at later dates. It's likely the years past, those were not implemented, and we have what we currently have for almost 25 years, at least from the when this was designed. So we do have a blueprint. That blueprint's 25 years old. And I think that we can do better, and we can add, there's quite a bit in this plan, but we can tailor it to, current needs for the school as well as the community.
Lucas, am I correct that there will be renderings and sort of that sort of thing coming up? We're just not quite there yet.
Correct.
Right.
We're looking at basically different playground systems in order to get some pricing behind that. Beyond that, in terms of how things will be programmed, there is a desire to have sort of separate spaces for the younger students, K-1, as well as the older students, 2 through 4, so that simultaneous activities can occur in that area. Where now they're limited because the turf field, which currently exists, bisects the space. So it really limits kids, if they're using that turf field, it limits their circulation and sort of eliminates the front end or the Bedford side road of that space. And there's also consideration of taking those elements, the landscape that's currently there in the front, and possibly incorporating that into sort of the fenced in, into the recreational area, so that that area will be fenced in, lending itself to landscape components that are like further away from the school, but also bringing those throughout the space. Earlier representations show like a pathway, which is tree lined, that cuts through the entire space. And that's currently not the way it is now. We're looking at these options.
Yes, sir.
Yes, my name is Tom Rooney. I live at 26 Hillview Drive. I'm a lifelong resident of Pleasantville and a very strong supporter of the school. My only comment at this point is that I hear all the comments about the plastic on the AstroTurf, and it's true. But I'm not going from that angle. I'm going from a cost perspective. It's extremely expensive. If you go through with putting down all the AstroTurf, in as little as 10 years, you're going to have to replace it all again. That's his given normal lifespan. Could be more, could be less. If you go through with this and put down the AstroTurf, I'm suggesting you have some type of capital fund plan in place now to replace that AstroTurf in 10 years. So the taxpayers don't get hit with a really big bill. A lot of us here in the community are retired on fixed budgets, and we just can't do all this expense, particularly all at once. So I'm hoping that when you present this budget, you don't put it all together like you did the last time, which in my opinion is why it went down. Item by item, some things just need to be done, like the heating systems at the schools. I can't believe the Bedford Road School is 20 years old already. I remember when it got built. But my only point is the AstroTurf is extremely expensive. I know it's easier to maintain if done properly, but there's nothing wrong with dirt. I played on those fields and played sports in those fields, and I came home very muddy. And you know what? You wash it off and things are good. So my whole point is, I think you should keep those fields not dirt, but grass. Thank you.
Thank you. So one of the things that we actually did do in 2021 was set up a capital reserve account. And that's basically a dedicated account. It was approved by the voters, where if there is excess funds left over at the end of a school budget year, some of those excess funds can go into this capital reserve account. That is meant to be sort of the savings account for the larger ticket capital expenditures, replacements of the turf. It was something that wasn't started when the original turf went in, excuse me. But we had the benefit of John Chow coming along and saying, you guys really need this account. There are funds in that account. They will build up over time. And the idea is to use those to defray any potential increase caused by having to replace the turf. So that's already in place. It is building up funds. In order to use those funds, we will need voter approval. So that's not money that we are just allowed to spend however we like. It needs to be for a capital project, and it needs to be put as a proposition to the voters to use the funds in that account. There's also a maximum that we're allowed to put in those accounts to save. I want to say it's $4 million. $4 million, that's the maximum we can save, and we can't hold it indefinitely. It has to be spent, I think, within 10 years, subject to some nuance about when money went in, when money went out. So we do have that in place, and we do plan on continuing to utilize that because we realize that a project like this, we are asking a lot from the community. While it's the hope, I think, to minimize that impact by utilizing bonds that are coming off. So the debt service that is ending is being replaced with potentially new debt service, hopefully lower price debt service. And then with a combination of those capital accounts can make any kind of impact to the taxpayer, hopefully negligible. John, anything that I misstated? Thank you. Sorry for stealing your show. Anyone else like to speak about BRS?
Good evening. Thanks for giving me the opportunity, and thank you all to the board for all you do. My name is John Harris, 7 Hillview Drive. I have 2 daughters in the district. And actually, my thoughts on the turf field with regards to BRS is that kind of because of our limitations with the fields, sometimes the junior high or the modified team has to practice there. And when we go to all the away games, they play on turf. So if it was grass, we'd be preparing to play against a team that's already playing on turf. And if you play field hockey, it's a totally different experience, turf to grass. So with regards to all the fields, if we're competing in field hockey and all our teams we're playing don't have turf, we're not giving our girls a great chance to compete because it's a lot harder. So yes, we don't have the field space, so they have to use BRS's turf. So understand the cost, the plastics, but turf is everywhere. I mean, football fields everywhere around. Most of them are turf. Tom Brady played until he was 40s on turf. Yes, he probably hurt his knee along the way, but I haven't heard of him having issues because of the turf fields. So for field hockey, when they go to play in the Olympics, they're playing on turf. So we want to promote the best here in town. So if it's BRS field or if it's another field, they're going to keep playing field hockey. We need the turf. Just wanted to make sure that was noted.
Thank you, John. One point to raise with respect to that, I think what we're trying to do in looking at our field usage, and again, correct me if I'm misstating anything here, but one of the things that we're looking at is trying to minimize the necessity for our high school teams and our modified programs to use that field. That field is used for Panther Club, and so it's not ideal to have a junior varsity tryout or varsity tryout, a modified practice on those fields. At sometimes it may be necessary, but I think the goal is to try to minimize that as much, if not eliminate, usage of BRS in that way. So it can be used for the younger kids for Panther Club, for after school, for their rec leagues. We can't really refer to what's at BRS's turf. It's actually just a mat. It's just a rug. It's much different from the field services here at the high school. So obviously that's something that the committee is looking into, and there likely will be some incorporation of a play surface that's not natural. But I think the hope is that we will have a lot more natural space at BRS, just because of the usage. We'll be able to facilitate much more natural space. And as I think several people pointed out, different play spaces. So it's not all about just playing soccer or just playing basketball. It's giving kids space to play a board game, read a book, have a conversation, different play areas for different age groups, which different equipment. A lot of the play areas that you look at now, they don't have the monkey bars that we all, I think, grew up with that are, 10 feet tall and you're hanging for your life trying to reach them. They have ones with different levels so that they can accommodate multiple age groups. So I think that's what we'd like to all see. If we had unlimited funds, I could promise you that we would do it. We don't. So we're going to put it on Lucas to figure out what we can afford, and we'll blame him when we don't get everything we want. So any additional questions, comments on BRS, please?
Hello, everyone. My name is Jim Bearden. I live at 56 Brentwood Drive. I have a 7-year-old in second grade BRS. I'm so sorry. I wanted to save this for when we actually got to the sports athletic fields, but I felt like I needed to address this. The most important thing that I'd like to make mention of in regards to playing surfaces in regards to the fields. And again, I know that there is another subcommittee set aside to discuss this later, but injuries and Jennifer touched on this before earlier, 58% difference. You could go ahead and Google it. It's really easy. Just the differences in injuries is incredibly stark. There's not a lot. I mean, there's a few people here. For all the people listening at home, I don't know. We're in New York. How many New York Giants fans are here? They're switching the turf finally to grass because of the non-contact ACL injuries to their team, who, you know, again, sadly, I'm a Giants fan. It's been pretty terrible lately, but we're talking non-contact injuries. Turf does not give. You stick to it. I tore my ACL in college on a turf field. And I know that's me, but that's what happens. There is no give, there is no slide. You plant and your foot sticks and the rest of your body goes. I work for Stryker. For those of you who are not familiar, Stryker is a medical device company. I work in the trauma and extremities divisions, particularly in the joint replacement division. What I can tell you is that the trauma that our children could potentially be subject to at a young age is cumulative. Okay, partial tears of the meniscus, of ligaments. We're talking about years and years and years of medical. We still cannot regrow these things. I work in joint replacement. We put metal inside your bodies, but we're not going to regrow cartilage. Okay, maybe someday we will, but this could lead to serious problems down the line where we're looking at potential joint replacements. I can tell you right now, when I tore my ACL, I was in the best shape of my life. I wouldn't wish that rehab upon anybody, not even my worst enemy. And not only that, but then we're getting into the drugs prescribed to treat these injuries. Like, the kids don't need it. All right. The kids want to go out there and they want to smell the grass and they want to play on it. And if practice gets canceled because it's raining or snowing, so be it. Stay inside and watch a movie. Give them a hug. I love this town. I love the kids in it. It's not worth it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to ask a question or comment on the BRS project? Okay. Anyone on the dais like to add any final thoughts on the BRS subcommittee?
So just want to share an appreciation. I think in all of the conversations that we've had, we've really tried to take into consideration the age span of children that we have that are using that space on a daily basis, as well as the community at large. We know what BRS can look like on a beautiful day in fall, in spring, and the community comes out in full force to use that space as well. Panther Club, camps. You guys have done a wonderful job of naming all of the groups. And within that, of taking into consideration children who really enjoy using the space in an active way, but we have a growing number of children that may not be their interest when they're out at recess as well. And so as we're looking at plans of how do we make the most use of space out there, of really taking into consideration all of these things, as well as how can we potentially get maybe more than one grade level outside? Right now, we have the ability to have one grade level outside at a time, and increasing the ability to have more students out there as we have more activities that are available would really benefit our students from being able to get outside more and get more fresh air. So thank you so much for all of the input, all of the thoughtful questions, and all of your thoughts. I know it's something that we will definitely take into consideration as we meet again as a subcommittee.
Thank you. With that, we will now move to the STEAM subcommittee, and I will turn it over to Laura Donna.
Hi, everyone. So before I begin, we just wanted to extend a really big thank you to both Demos and Cosmo for all the work that they've put into the STEAM subcommittee. We have made quite a bit of progress and have had some very meaningful and collaborative discussions and conversations. To begin, we're working on creating a mission statement for STEAM, one which will give everyone a clear understanding of what STEAM is, what it entails, and it will help to prioritize and move some of the work forward. We also, administrators and teachers have been making recommendations of what the needs are. And by the end of the week, we hope to finalize some of these recommendations, and which we will then further explore. We will have short-term goals as well as long-term. So short-term is going to be more renovation and enhancing of existing spaces and what we have, where the longer-term goals will be some of the bigger projects that have come up. We had a very productive meeting with reps from the PTA as well as FOPA and FOVA and other group members, and we had gathered quite a bit of feedback and insight as to what some of these necessities and the needs and wants are. We know that moving forward, our next steps are going to get more student feedback and just some student voice in the process as we move forward, as all the work that we're doing and the efforts are really for them. So I think that's where we are currently.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add is that, and we'll see if any of our committee members want to add any, is that I think that we really what we've really has really shifted in the last, I think, couple of months is the ability to interact more with the administrators and the teachers around what their needs are. And so I think by the end of next week, we'll have some more concrete decisions to put forward. Whole committee.
And this is probably the most challenging of all the pieces of the capital project because it's so interwoven between operational and capital. Building fields, building lights, building playgrounds, replacing chillers, replacing heat pumps, upgrading security, they're all physical things. That's really not what STEAM is. STEAM starts from the ground operationally. Mary Fox Alter used to give a speech every year, and she really grounded into me, and I think a lot of us here, that you don't build facilities and then shape the program to fit the facilities. You build the program and then provide facilities that meet the needs for those programs. And I think that's the challenge as we look into STEAM, because it's evolving probably faster than any other group by its very nature. And it is so operational. So I think this is, something that we are going to invest capital in. The committee is working very hard to find projects to help support those things. But I think it's going to be a longer term investment for this district in operational and figuring out what's next and how do we support these students and how do we develop these programs. We have a tremendously successful Science Olympiad team that's continuously growing. We have more and more kids that are interested in these fields, and I think it's a wonderful thing that we need to support. But that's really got to be built around the operational side. I think one of the key steps to doing that is the director of curriculum that we've hired recently that will help shape the curriculum, that will help guide sort of where we can take these programs. So really appreciate everybody that's putting in the work to this, because it's probably the most difficult of all of them to really figure out what a physical project looks like here. With that being said, is there anything you'd like to add to that, or open up to questions?
I'd just like to add, so you mentioned Dr. Joshua Deitch will be coming in actually tomorrow for a little preview before he starts next week. He'll be our Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment. And I think one of the things you noted, and if we look at BRS, STEAM, and what we're going to hear about Fields and Lights is we're talking a lot about how to make the space work for our needs. And relative to a home, it looks like a lot of space, but it's not. So the BRS space, an acre and a quarter. I know people with a family of 4 with an acre and a quarter. Well, we have that space, which is only 75% of a soccer field for 550 of our kids. Recess, phys ed classes, plus camp, and anything else we have to use it for. So we really need to make that space into something that does as much as possible. STEAM. We have classrooms now that need to be, there are, you've probably heard this, there are jobs that your children will be going into that you haven't heard of yet, haven't been invented yet. So we need our space to be adaptable. We need to be able to do things in 3 years that we haven't thought of now. So the more flexible our spaces can be, the more multi-purpose our spaces can be, the better. And that's interior and exterior. So you'll hear this theme a lot, that we have over 1,600 students plus a couple hundred adults in this district. We have to be deliberate and careful with our space. And that's I think what you're hearing out of this committee. So there was a comment that you'd like to see a map or a floor plan. Absolutely, we're going to provide that. But before we get there, we're going to make sure we look at every tree, every fence, and particularly every need to put into that plan. So I think that's a theme you're hearing tonight, and it's an important point to remember.
Can I just add something that you said, Mike, which was, I think the exciting but the challenging thing about the STEAM work is exactly sort of what you got to, which is that as we uncover and hear from folks about the scope of needs, some of them are not capital project, needs, they're operational needs. And so I think one of the things that the subcommittee, the STEAM subcommittee is gonna have to work through is also being transparent about that with the communities as we identify sort of these are the groups, these are the things that came up from teachers and students and administrators about the needs. How are we addressing them? And some portion of them will be capital project, and then some portion of them will be things that have to be built into the budget, or that are already some of them are even already underway. So I think it's been one of the interesting things, but it is, I think, one of the challenging things to sort of distinguish those pieces, because not everything is actually appropriate for a capital project.
That's a really, really important point, and I'm glad you brought it up, because there was a lot of discussion around the last project about why can't, there be more money for this and that, and they were naming a lot of things that were operational. Those things have to come out of our annual operational budget because they need to be sustainable. There needs to be knowledge that we will have those funds every year for continuity and that we can actually maintain those programs. So we would never use capital funds. We would never put a bond out to hire a teacher, for instance, because there would be no longevity to that. It's a one-time expense. And so I think that's a very, very important distinction to make.
And this is, John Chow could speak to this, but there are also limitations on what you're allowed to put into a capital project that we're always balancing.
Great point. Is there anyone that would like to come up and ask questions, give us some commentary on the STEAM subcommittee? I promise I wasn't going to reread the rules if you come up. Okay. There being no one, we're going to turn it to Eric to talk about Fields and Lights update.
I think you said
Got
Eric.
Eric on my notes.
We're going to go with Mr. Vimosi.
Okay, either way. Okay, so Field and Light. So first of all, to start, I also want to acknowledge leadership positions from Lauren Lauder as well as Peter Scher from the village, who worked very hard on making sure we are challenging ourselves, making sure we have a good plan. So the focus has been on understanding how we're using our fields currently, what our availability is, looking at our athletic needs moving forward. And I'll explain a little bit kind of that big challenge we have of back-to-back games and why that challenge exists. So that's what we're looking at. And one of the areas of feedback we heard when we went through this the first time is we did not take a hard enough look at Parkway Field with our village partners. And so we did undertake an analysis, which I will share and is available on our website. And then also understanding that if that does not pan out, if that's not an option, what are those other challenges, or what are those other options, I should say, we have for lighting at our main field if we're not able to utilize Parkway? So before we go to the next slide, I do want to just, and I hear the feedback on the turf. And what I'll say is that there's pros and cons to every surface that we utilize. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge not only for us here in Pleasantville, but really across Westchester, across Section 1, across New York State. And when a lot of other communities are looking at the options, they are moving away from grass. They are moving to turf fields, understanding the risk, understanding the benefits to it. You know, in the last few years, Croton has moved over and they've just opened up a brand new facility, moving from grass. Ardsley just this fall has opened a new facility. Hastings in June approved 2 new fields of turf, moving away from grass. So it's not a unique Pleasantville thing. And I think all communities are trying to weigh the risks and the benefits. And it is a challenge, but I don't think we're alone in looking at those benefits and trying to weigh them as best we can. So that is a challenge that we are trying to meet. I will also say too, that it does provide the turf does provide a more reliable surface. And I would encourage people to look at our fields on the weekends here. And they are jam-packed from morning to evening. And then I would say, go and look at some of the grass fields, and the grass fields are available, but people are not choosing to utilize them. And I think that tells the reliability and the benefits of them. But it's not a one way or the other, 100%. There's obviously, you know, weighing those risks and benefits. But I want to point out that it is a challenge and it's a decision that we have to make as a community. So that's one item. So we can go to the next slide. And just to highlight, to make sure what we're talking about, this is our campus here at the high school. So we have from our tennis courts to what we'll refer to as an upper field, which is the grass field between the main turf and the tennis courts. We have our small practice field, and in the back we have the softball field. So from a Fields and Lights subcommittee, here are some of the things that we are reviewing. There has been no final decisions. There's been no endorsements. There's still more discussions to have. But just to highlight some of the areas that we're looking at. Number one, returfing our main turf and our small turf and resurfing that track. The field is currently in the 10th year. It'll be another at least 2 years even if we approve it next May. So that'll have that 12 years. I do want to point out that we do have a unique situation here in Pleasantville. I'm not aware of, if you look at other school districts, other facilities, where their main recess space is the only full-size turf field that people have. So the field does get a lot of usage. The track gets a lot of usage, and so it does work through there. It has adding lights to main turf on here, but I think it's selecting the lights, and I'll explain the lights and why that's on there. Turfing that upper field. What we heard earlier from the BRS committee is that, you know, there are days when our Panther Club is not able to be outside, that we have middle school and sometimes high school students out there in full gear, you know, throwing balls around and everything, and it creates a safety priority. And it's easy to say, well, then they shouldn't be there, but we have to give them some place to go. It's not possible to say, well, then they have to go find a space. And as I explained, in a lot of neighboring districts, and as we heard from Mr. Harris, we want to be able to give the student athletes the surfaces that are being utilized across Westchester. Adding outdoor bathrooms and fencing to the field. So I think the bathrooms, I think if anyone who's been out there on weekends knows that there's generally a porta potty. And so it's woefully inadequate. And to be able to provide some running water should not be a big ask when the schools are not open, which is anytime that we do not have school activities. So Saturday afternoons or Sundays. So adding that, and I think additional security fencing. If anyone goes out to those fields, you will see bikes all over those fields, which also impact the usefulness. I have a video from this past week where we had someone riding their electric scooter around like a racetrack. So, we need to better secure those facilities in order to ensure they do last longer than they currently are. And I think, we've added security, but they're not there 24 hours a day. So there are security personnel there on weekends to ensure that we are utilizing those fields appropriately. Looking at our high school backfield, I'll say that is, we're still discussing it, but I think there is a strong momentum of last time we did talk about a turf field back there. And I think taking a look at the options for keeping it as a grass field is something that we can do, and we'll continue to have more conversations about that before any decisions are made, as well as looking at some sound mitigation options that we would have for all of our fields here at the school. So that is kind of the big picture of our field and light subcommittee. I want to kind of dive into the analyses that were done and also explain what's driving the need for lights.
Hey, John, can we stop there for 1 second? I just want to add one or two things.
Yep.
You brought both of them up, but I just want to highlight them again. The building of the bathroom is really to serve the community, not the school. When school's in session, athletic team playing on those fields, when there's a school club using those fields, they have access to the internal bathrooms at the school. These bathrooms would really be used for the recreational leagues and the parents and kids that come and use our fields over the weekends and at times when the school's not using them. And that sort of plays into the next thing. 2 or 3 years ago, we took a hard look at the policy of using our fields and revamped it completely after many, many discussions talking about what the appropriate limit was, because we were trying to balance a number of things. We were trying to balance appropriate use, liability, because if we have groups out there that are running full-side games and they're not authorized by the school, they're not covered by insurance. And we want to make it available to the community in large. So we were trying to protect that. We hired security that go out there on a irregular basis, so that different groups don't realize, when security is going to be there or not. They make sure that people aren't riding dirt bikes on the track, tearing up the turf fields. But there's a balance here, because what we don't want to stop happening is for this being a gathering place for the community. We want the father to come down there and toss a football. We want the kids to come down there and play with each other with the lacrosse sticks. So it is a very careful balance, and we're still figuring out that balance, because I think it's important to me, it's important to all of us that this remain a community property. You go to some of the other fields around us and it's completely locked down. There's no use to the community of these fields. In fact, they have somebody that comes on a golf cart, runs you off the field if you try to use it. That's not who we want to be. But we want to make sure that the fields are being used appropriately, so they're here for all of our community.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, John.
So what's driving the need for lights, right? This is a question a lot. When my kids were in school, we didn't have these needs for lights. So we said, well, how can we best explain this, right? And so number one, school now ends 1 hour later than it used to, right? If you go back 20 years ago, school ended at 2:20. Now it ends at 3:20. So that's number one. That's 1 hour difference there. We have later end times. And what that is leading to is a start time of games that is later. And so, before there was almost a 2 hour gap between the end of the school day and the start time of games. Well, now we have a shorter gap, but we do have it later. Now the recommended, and this is from BOCES, they recommend that games start at 5 p.m. And sometimes games are challenged to start at that time. But that is the recommended time for the start times, to give the kids time to get out of school, to get changed, to get to their games. And so that is a challenge. We also have bus driver shortages. And so sometimes the bus driver says, I cannot get back as soon as I would have liked. I have to do my route, and then I can pick up the kids and go. There's official shortages, and official shortages are leading from that migration you see on the left. When we were done, right? We were done at 5:45, 6 o'clock with all of our games, if you go back 20 years ago. And then we had sunset at 6:30 as of, a day or two from now. Well, if the games aren't starting till 5 o'clock and they are going that hour and a half at least, and now because of the official shortages, which has been ongoing nationwide, New York State, Westchester-wide for many years, the decision by BOCES has made to schedule games back to back. And so now you have that need. So if you look, on that on that left side of the screen, you'll see kind of that big open space from 6 to 8 that existed 20 years ago. And now that space is being taken up to 8 to 8:30, depending upon the length of the game and the start times. So that's a challenge that we have to meet. We have multiple sports already playing back to back, and the word that we are getting from BOCES is more are coming. More are coming in the fall and more are coming in the spring. When that is exactly, we're going to have to see, but more are coming. In addition, the scheduling has been strengthened, enhanced, where you are no longer playing your neighbors off the bat. You are no longer playing, Pleasantville is no longer playing Briarcliff and Valhalla and Byram Hills and Westlake automatically. They are looking at those strength of schedules to say, what is the appropriate team for you to play to benefit the student athletes? And in many times, those may be farther away. Those may be up in Pauling or North Salem or Mamaroneck or areas farther away. So it takes longer to get there, which is what's also driving that later start time. So far this season, there's been 5 home games that have been affected where we've needed to utilize the lights. And I think you're going to continue to see that pattern this fall and again in the spring when we first put in those temporary lights. So that's what's driving the need for the lights. It's not a want. It's really a need if we want to have these programs available for the kids. Okay, so establishing kind of that need for the lights, the question is, okay, if we're going to have them, where can we put those lights? And so based on our complex scheduling and our limited field availability, one of the questions was, and one of the feedback for the last one is we haven't properly explored Parkway. So we hired Woodard and Curran, who's an engineer, to explore, could we put in an athletic field, a turf athletic field with lights in the back? And they came back with their conclusion that because of the wetlands back there, and you can see this is in a floodplain. There are also New York State sensitive wetlands there. So it would impose a huge challenge to, number one, even permit and go through the process, but number two, the high cost of construction, as well as the utilization of it, that it would not drain well, it would be subject to damage, and so it would not be utilized. So based on their, and to be honest, that is not a field, although we did partner with the village on this in order to look at this, but the back of the field presents real challenges. The front of the field is utilized for other sports. So you really need 2 different fields down there. And because of the location of the baseball field, you need to put it in the back. and the back is not a reasonable place to put it in. So we looked at that, and the conclusion was that the Parkway backfield is not a suitable location for a turf field. So once we established that, then we said, okay, if we are going to focus on our home campus here and focus on our lighting options here, at the last proposal, at the last bond, we said, okay, well, let's look at those permanent athletic LED fields, LED lights. But the committee came up with, said, well, there's other options out there, and I think we should explore that as a committee. So we once again asked Woodard and Curran to explore these options, and there's really 5 different options. So there's the diesel-powered temporary lights that are currently out there now that we're utilizing. There are the permanent athletic LEDs used in many fields. We looked at telescoping lights, lights that could raise and go down. We looked at solar powered lights, and we looked at plug-in electric lights as well. So we really took a look at all of the different options. And you can, this report is up on the website, and you can look at it, and you can look at the costs. Some of them are in that same ballpark, like the permanent athletic LEDs and the electric powered telescoping lights are in the kind of that same ballpark. Some of them are lower. But what we have to look at too is really, are they suitable for the needs? And so there is standards out there. There's the National Federation of High School Associations, and they have standards that they put out for these are the appropriate level for player safety that they believe you should meet. And out of these, the only one that came back with a positive was the permanent light poles. The electric powered skid mounts, it was possible, but the vendor has not completed their photometrics. So we looked at light pollution and glare, right? And that's kind of when you're looking at the lights. Are you getting lights in your eyes? Are the players able to see? We looked at the experience and qualifications, the prevalence, as well as the warranty, because we want to make sure that we're being good stewards here. And so you can see that some of them have a much shorter warranty despite high costs. And so to have to replace those when we talk about even and I heard the comment before about the constant cost of turf replacement. Well, I think from if we were to select some of these options, the cost of the lights would be far greater. So once again, we have not come back with a formal recommendation, but we wanted to share all of the information here. To just drill in a little bit into the athletic LEDs, we did look at different heights at 60-foot poles, which would require 6 poles, or 80-foot poles, which would require 4 poles in order to properly light the field. So, and 60-foot was indicated to be the lowest that would meet the NFHS standards. So, we have options there. And once again, the committee has not made a recommendation yet, but we'll continue to have that conversation. One of the other comments, just looking at the next field that we heard during it, we wanted to look at this, was about how high are these poles relative to to the surrounding neighborhoods. That is one of the comments we heard, that these would be much higher. And people think of Parkway, which does not have the same surrounding area from a topography perspective. And so we wanted to so we asked Woodard and Curran to come back. And so, you can draw your own conclusions here. But we wanted to make sure that we are providing information to the community so the community could make their decisions. This field that we have is generally set down lower than the surrounding. It is lower, so that gives us a benefit. But you can kind of draw your conclusions there. So we had them look at rooftops, at the field ground, at trees, how high the light poles, and this information here is with the 80-foot. So you would have to subtract 20 feet, and that's also in the final report to understand the relative difference to the surrounding communities, because we wanted to make sure that we are providing information to the community. And so moving on to the next one, once again, we have not come up with a final decision, but from the report conclusion from Woodard and Curran, which the committee now needs to take in, is they said the most viable long-term solution that also meets the athletic standards, controls that light and spill, offers that strong warranty and avoids the noise and the fumes of the temporary lights, would be the permanent LED lighting. That the temporary solutions do not meet those athletic standards compliance and probably is not the best from a community experience as well. So it's the committee will continue to work to determine what the best lighting option would be to move forward. Some of our next steps include furthering the discussion that happened before last year of a lighting policy and how we can try to meet those needs, as well as exploring some sound mitigation options for the main turf, as well as exploring the high school backfield and see what additional enhancements we can make, understanding that the strong preference is to keep that as grass. So a lot of work, and once again, thank you to the entire committee. I think we set the record for meeting the most amount of times. It was a lot of hours for everyone, but and we wanted to go out in the community, ask the hard questions, which is fair. And so we wanted to go out and get that information and to be able to present it here for let people to draw their own conclusions and to understand what those options are, as well as weighing the benefits and the cons of each one of those. So I'm assuming there's no comments or questions. Oh, sorry, I do have one more. I thought I had one more. Are we going to do that before or after? Should I do it now? Now? Okay. So one of the additional feedback that we had last time was how do we want to bundle these? And last time we did one bond, and what are the options that we have? Once again, no final decisions have been reached, but I do want to thank two of our committee members, Jonathan Cunningham and Will Collins, who sat down and brought back a proposal to the committee and said, here is an idea in how this can be bundled. One is infrastructure, those repairs, those replacements, the safety upgrades. That could be one proposition. A second proposition could be innovations and enhancements. And so you could have a number of, and these are kind of the buckets, and we'll have to go back and figure out what falls into each. And the third one would be lights at the main field. If that's the final, conclusion that everyone reach. But that is one way that you could bucket this to give the community that option to kind of vote on each one of these. Not, there's not 20 lines here, but there's 3 different buckets, which I think is, if you look at other communities recently, Hastings did one that was in 3 different buckets. So it gives some of that flexibility, but while being efficient as well. So that is kind of the current proposal that is on the table. A little more fleshing out to understand exactly from these 3 subcommittees which one is in each, but I think it kind of gives us a framework. So I thought it was well done, and I thank them for bringing that to the committee.
Thank you.
Now I'm done.
Now we'll open it up for questions and comments.
Hello again. I'm Kristen Wunderlich. I'm at 60 Lakeshore Drive. And I'm here in opposition to the turf. So thank you for hearing us. I do appreciate the smaller footprint that you are recommending up there. It's very nice to see. But someone asked me recently why I care about the turf. And I realized a lot of stuff that I assume people know, they don't know. So I wanted to speak a little bit on why it's important to me. The first thing is very personal. My father actually had a cut on his knee from turf, and it was infected with the bacteria, and he almost died. He was in the hospital for weeks because of this cut on his knee. Because turf fields naturally host pathogens, they're very dirty, and a lot of people have no idea that that's even a risk factor. The second thing is also very personal. I was diagnosed with cancer in my 30s. My sister was diagnosed with cancer in her 30s, and no one in my family has cancer. So we spent a lot of time really learning about what the environmental causes of cancer are, things that come into your home from outside, because it's not genetic for us. And I learned that plastic is made with chemicals that cause cancer and disrupt hormones, which also causes cancer. So it's one of many things. You know, I'm not saying turf caused my cancer, but it's one of many things that we are seeing happen today. And we need to be aware just how dangerous the chemicals in plastics are. Some people spoke earlier about microplastics. You know, I had some stuff to go in about that because that's a big issue for me as well. But I do want to speak on how new the research is on microplastics. We're talking about how widely used turfs are, but this research on microplastics is brand new. The article that was mentioned earlier about a plastic spoon came out in February of 2025. Another recent article from The Guardian in September 2025, just this very month, was released that talked about how many microplastic particles we breathe in every day. That number is 68,000. And they are small enough to burrow into our bodies and stay in our bodies. They're building up inside of us, and they are causing substantial health impacts. You spoke about some recent turf projects in Westchester that passed. I do know some people in Hastings, and I know that vote was very contentious, and it passed by 17 votes. So this is not an overwhelming, you know, pro-turf environment that we're facing right now. It's very contentious, and there are a lot of people who disagree that turf is the right way to go. I mentioned the last time I spoke here that there is a lot of municipalities in Massachusetts that have embraced fully grass fields, and they're doing just fine. So really, the more people learn about how dangerous turf is, the more you realize that maybe this is not the right way to go. So I just also want to mention, someone mentioned earlier, you know, our kids are fine, but we are seeing some new things happen today with young people, rising rates of cancer of people in their 20s and 30s that people can't explain. We are seeing rising rates of infertility, which could come from plastics because they do disrupt hormones that people cannot explain. So there are things that are happening to our environments that we need to be aware of, and we need to, as a community, try to reduce the amount of plastics that are coming into our community. You don't have to listen to me, but I do ask you to listen to the experts. The Mount Sinai Children's Environmental Health Center in New York is one of 10 centers in the country that look at childhood disease specifically from environmental causes. And they have just released, again, very new in May of this year, 2025, a position statement against plastic turf because it is not safe for children. So if it's up to me, if I was voting, I certainly would vote for grass. I would say I'd rather have dirt patches than pristine grass fields. I know that I may not be, you know, I know that everyone does not agree with me. But I do think that especially for BRS, the smallest bodies in our community need the absolute safest materials that we can give them. Thank you.
Thank you. We got a race. Who's gonna make it first?
Hello, everyone. My name is Josh Northridge. I live at 187 Locust Road. I want to thank the board, the subcommittees, everybody who's worked on subcommittees. I can't imagine the number of hours of work, thought, and analyzation that's already gone into what we've seen here today and what you've been doing the last several months, dare I say years, and what's to come. I certainly appreciate the consideration of arts and academics that's going into this project, along with sports and athletics that's gone into the capital project. I also want to thank you for the consideration and focus on the communication plan and community outreach. These opportunities to hear from you and ask questions and provide feedback are very valuable. So thank you. At this time, our athletic facilities are very poor compared to almost every other school district that we compete against. When you go and you play away games, you see what other school districts have and what we need to work on and upgrade. Woefully inadequate was a phrase that's already been used, and that's appropriate. Pleasantville deserves better. Our students deserve better. Our students deserve to be proud of where they play. Even if you're not on a competitive high school JV, varsity, or modified team and you're out there for recess, you deserve to be proud of where you're playing outside. To that end, permanent lights, new turf, and bathrooms are a great first step. Turf isn't what it used to be, admittedly, and I know that you are looking into the most safe synthetic surfaces for our kids. These upgrades to our facilities, they're not just a nice to have. It's not a choice. They are a need to have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Pete Demolatis. I live at 15 Leroy Street. I knew I couldn't sit here at this meeting and not weigh in on the turf war. I can't help myself. First off, I do not like turf. I do not think it's the safest. In my job, I work with some former NFL players who will all tell you unanimously they always love playing on grass more than turf. It held up better. Fewer injuries. Their body just feels better the next day. I even emailed John a Washington Post article a couple weeks ago that talked about the, concerns, risks with turf and everything. Just one thing, though, that I always hold myself to is I'm not going to complain about something unless I can offer a solution to it. And just seeing how much our fields are used the climate in the Northeast, I just don't see how a grass field will be able to hold up. And I think it comes with its own problems. I know, the gentleman, I'm sorry, I forget your name, but you mentioned, you're a Giants fan. I'm also a once proud, currently suffering Giants fan. But the Giants didn't always used to have turf. In 2000, they invested in a state-of-the-art grass system. They had these grass trays. We were bringing the grass trays. If some of them get used up, you just take a tray out, you put a new grass in, yada. They spent $5 million to put it in. They spent $1 million every year to upkeep it, and it was terrible. Players were getting injured. They were slipping, clumps of dirt flying in the air, and it just really wasn't safe. After 3 years, they abandoned it. If you look at any NFL stadium, grass stadium, especially as you get later into the season, the fact is that they do not hold up very well. I think of Washington. They have a grass field. They used to spray paint their mud green so that it would look better on TV. And players, slipped and got seriously hurt because there was actually no traction under them and they were tearing ACLs and stuff. So as much as I'd like to think that live in a world where hey, my kids are, oh, wow, that's hot. Sorry. I would love to live in a world where, hey, my kids are falling, in the grass and everything rather than on plastic. And I understand that. The fact is that I live in the Northeast, and if we go with grass fields, they're gonna be muddy, and they're gonna be probably unsafe. And they're gonna be not up to the standard that, frankly, I think our kids deserve. So, do I wish that we had like, do I wish that we lived in like, Texas and have grass fields and everything? Like, that'd be great. Yes. But unfortunately we don't. And also I'm sure, you have the numbers, John, and everything, but like the cost difference is also like massive. And if you have NFL teams and billionaires who have all their resources and they can't keep their fields up to like a good standard when they have one team playing there a week, then how are we going to keep our field with our I mean, unless I didn't look at the numbers on the capital project, but I'm assuming we don't have as much money as the NFL. But I don't see how we are going to be able to keep up grass fields. So I'm just saying that I would love to live in a grass world, but unfortunately, I have to live in reality.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to highlight too that we are having grass fields, right? Despite all of this, we still utilize, as a school district, not only as a village, but as a school district, we still utilize Soldiers and Sailors, which is a grass. We still utilize Parkway back for games. We still utilize the front of Parkway. We're hoping to continue to use high school back. So there is not a movement to all turf fields, and I think pulling back that high school one and trying to invest in it is an area. So I appreciate the comments, and just to highlight, we still have, when you look at our footprint, we still have a very heavy, and I would probably say there's more grass fields still after all of this than there are turf fields that the school district utilizes.
Hi, Joanne. Carol Homlish again. Two things. It's always good to have a little history behind what happens in a school district, and Tom Rooney can confirm this. First of all, you're talking about school getting out later. When Tom and I went to school here, the last bell rang at 3:21. So coming out in the twos anywhere would have been glorious for us. I have a question. Last spring, the New York State Department of Education began the process of looking at encouraging, and I'm using the word encouraging, the consolidation of extracurricular activities for school districts. As we put money into this, how are we following that encouragement along? And how will it affect what they are then willing to give us to do all the work that needs to be done? And then my second question is, and it's very simple. You had bundles of 1, 2, and 3. Could you explain what is in bundle 2? Because I didn't quite understand it.
Yep.
And the other thing is, I'm not going to get into turf versus grass, but you should know that when we were first looking at turfing this field, talk about controversy, you don't even want to know. But it came down to pennies, because the big selling point was that if we turfed that field, it would be 50 years before we'd have to do anything to it. And we know that isn't true. But that was what people were told. So you have to understand, when you look at these things, you have to be realistic about the real cost of replacing all of this will be. It won't be 50 years. It won't be 25 years. It'd probably be more like 10 or 15. So with what the Department of Education is looking at and what replacement time is involved in this, I'd like to know how you're the question is, how are we combining these two bits of information to help us understand what the real cost is going to be? And I would hate to see in less than 10 years, suddenly the New York State says, you know what, Pleasantville, you're a tiny little school district, so we're not going to help you with this. You're going to have to combine with another district. And it's been done in the past. Pleasantville originally was Pleasantville, Hawthorne, Thornwood, and Armonk. And they broke it up as the population grew. So now we're a smaller population. We're taking on more of a burden. And then my last question is, what contingencies are in place as time goes on when there are more sports that want to be played? Where are we going to put them? How are we going to deal with it? Those are my 3 questions. First, What's in bundle 2? What's behind door 2?
So stay up here so we can make sure we get all of the questions.
Yeah,
So bundle
Let
2.
me.
yeah. What's in bundle
I'll-
2? It just said
I'm gonna
bundle
take a
2.
try At the State Department of Education.
Yeah.
If you are referring to regionalization, this was.
Yes.
Okay, so this is an effort by the New York State Department of Education in a way to promote equity and promote resource sharing. So that's one of those things that school districts certainly did long before that suggestion. So for example, there are BOCES programs in which that is literally regionalized sharing of services. Pleasantville, as a matter of fact, has made its name for allowing other districts to share in our special services. Merged sports teams are quite common. If you look at, for example, girls ice hockey, Mr. Iorio would tell you that I think there are like 8 districts represented on the one team. If you look at historical scenarios like Pocanico Hills, for example, we have they have a shared relationship. So there's a great history of regionalized sharing here. To get to your, I think was your last point about as if the population kind of goes down and more sports. So that tends to work itself out. So for example, I'll take baseball and boys lacrosse, same season. As your numbers shrink, there could be a possibility you might not be able to field both teams. Not all schools do. Not all schools have the same sports. And
Right.
A lot of that has to do with the numbers that you can support. So sometimes there are requests for a new club, new sport, whether it's, if you're near the water, maybe it's rowing or boys volleyball or girls flag football. These are all growing sports. You wind up supporting what your population wants and needs. And if you can't, the programs can't run. So we wouldn't be in a position where we have too many sports for the number of people we have.
Can I ask one question? How many, I think I heard there were 1,600 students in the district now. Is that correct?
Little over, correct.
Do we have a projection for what the next 5 years will be?
We do.
And what are they?
Off the top of my head,
Yeah,
I don't have
why
that
not?
chart available. But we can
Guesstimate.
Guesstimate.
Yeah. Are we growing? Are we staying the same? Are we losing students?
We're in a shallow downturn, like most of Westchester.
Okay.
What's happening is population of New York and Westchester is getting smaller. Population is aging. Housing market is causing people to stay where they are longer and not move in. So less kids moving in. So that's typical of our area.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I move to the bundle?
Yeah, I want to know what's in the bundle.
Well, I also want to just mention on the regionalization, that was
Yeah.
originally put out as a mandate. Uniformly, a lot of school districts objected to it very hard. It was really designed, my belief is it was really designed as a program for upstate schools that didn't necessarily have as strong a individual program, and they were trying to pool resources.
Right.
But I think, don't quote me on this, but I think there were a couple of schools in Long Island that actually sued on this regionalization, and it was rejected largely
Okay.
because there was a feeling that it was taking the control, the local control over the schools and removing it from the communities and replacing it with BOCES that didn't report to the individual communities.
And we do in this moment have merged teams with other districts where it's appropriate. I think swimming and diving was one. There's a number, but I think, Joanne, you also tacked on a question at the end about, that I want to make sure I understand about, like, what does that, it seemed like you were asking, will that drive New York State to say, Pleasantville, sorry,
Yeah.
we're not going to give you any more.
My concern is we're asking a lot of money. I know we're asking money from the state. Because we are so small, we are a small district. And I think the only other district close to our size is Bronxville, if I'm not mistaken.
Croton, I think, there's a number.
No,
there.
there's many, Valhalla, there's a long list.
Size.
Physical side.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, we're yes, we have a smaller
Yeah.
amount. That's part of why we're struggling, right? But I think I would be curious because, and maybe John Chow can speak to this, which is that the aid that we receive on this, once we get approved for this from the state, is locked in for the rest of so it's not like they can pull it back 5 years into the bond repayment, like this project,
Well,
once it's approved.
I understand that. My
Okay.
question was if there was additional capital projects, would we lose out?
So before we would go, I mean, John, I don't know if you want to speak to this, but
Yeah.
but what we can look at is what we already know, which is what is our is it building aid
Yeah.
ratio been over time.
Right.
And it's been, from my understanding from John Chow, like it's been very consistent. Of course, there's always a chance that in future years,
Right.
the state could change that. I don't think they would be targeting Pleasantville specifically. I think it would be something everybody was experiencing.
So
But
now all
John,
you need is what's behind door number 2.
And
I don't know
that was,
if John wants to correct it.
and that was a concern with the regionalization, that it was going to be used as a mechanism to cut building aid and funding aid.
Yeah.
And you saw what happened in Albany. There was a large fight about that. I think that almost argues for approving this project and moving quickly while we still have some level of surety. Because right now, I think we have a 54% reimbursement on building aid, and 53 and change.
So our building aid ratio is at 54%. It's a very high number. And once the projects are approved, the aid is guaranteed.
Okay.
The reason is because that comes with also the debt service. We're going to go out and borrow money. And so come back to the merging of school districts. It's not that easy because if we're going to merge with another school district, both districts have to approve. The voters have to vote on it. I think one of the last time it was voted on in Westchester was actually Tuckahoe and Eastchester.
Yes.
And
that
that did not pass. And, the district has to want to merge. And when I was at I used to work in Hastings,
Mhm.
and Hastings and Dobbs Ferry had discussions, and they didn't even get to the proposition part. So, the voters definitely have a say.
Yeah, in the past, Pleasantville was asked to merge with Briarcliff and Pleasantville voted it down. So
And
I'm aware.
also, another thing is that if you look at our budget book,
Mhm.
we actually project our 5 years of enrollment. So you can see the 5-year projection.
Great.
And
I'll
we
look at
have a
that.
new number coming out next week.
Great, thank you.
Do
Just
you want to talk about?
All right, the bundling.
bundling.
Right, option number 2. So to be clear, we have not reached a conclusion. And so some of these can go, but I can give you kind of one thought and you could argue, some of these can go into other buckets. But when we think about that innovation and enhancements, kind of
Yeah.
what's in that number 1 bucket, I would say for sure is those expedited
Mhm.
items that we saw first, the chillers, all that. And then so when we look at the rest of the subcommittees, what else is out there besides those core things? And you can say the STEAM enhancements are in there. You can say that upper turf field is in there. We can say the BRS play space, but once again, those are ideas, but I don't think we've reached firm conclusions of these are exactly in which
That's
buckets, but that will be known before we go out. We have to make that decision by the end of this year as to what goes into which bucket.
And
Great.
to be making that decision with input from the Community Facilities Committee
Great.
too.
That's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
So we're going to talk about that a little bit more, but the change, the step that has been taken is that we're at the point where we're going to separate out and look at different bundles. What specifically goes in there is still in the hands of the committees.
So before we move to timing and next steps. Oh, do we have more questions? Oh, please.
Hi, I'll be very brief. My name is Christine McCarville. I live at 139 Clinton Street, which is just diagonally across the street there. We came a little late tonight. We were unable to make it on time, but really wanted to be here. We really love living so close to campus. We feel like we're so much part of the school. We wake up in the morning, we put our garbage out. We know the custodial engineers, all their names, the kids walking to school, the teachers, Joe Palumbo. We're really part of this campus. One of the things that we're concerned about, and so were the neighbors, is the traffic flow. I'm not really sure if you addressed that or that's any bit of concern. But, you know, in the morning, the traffic flow is unbelievable in these tiny little streets. We have a beautiful school snuggled in a community here, which is very different than Chappaqua, Valhalla, Westlake. They're removed from, you know, the community. They have kind of their own space. We are here with these kind of small streets and a lot of traffic flowing through them. And I'm not really sure if that's going to change. Some people might say, well, when you bought your house, you knew, you know, that you were living near a school. When we bought our house 25 years ago, it was a sleepy little community where everybody walked to school. Now parents drive to school. There's more events. There's more community events. It seems like there's more sports. The fields are used by different teams and club teams, and it's just a continuous flow of traffic from 8 in the morning almost to 6 o'clock at night. By the time 7:30 rolls around, we have our, you know, little community to ourselves again. So I'm concerned about the lights, which I know that it's a great thing for the kids. I mean, I have my own kids. I was a phys ed special ed teacher for 33 years. I'm a coach, and I know how important it is to have lights, to have your own hometown games and things like that. But coupled with parent-teacher conferences, board meetings, concerts, and then maybe games or clubs at night, I really fear that we're going to have traffic till all hours of the night and all hours of the day. So I'm hoping that you keep that into consideration. I know that I watched the last meeting that you had, and there was a gentleman on that said, it's all about the kids. Yeah, it is about the kids. And being an educator for so long, I know, but it's also about the community that lives right next to the kids. So I really hope you take that in consideration, the traffic flow and the parking and things like that for the people who live right here. Thank you very much.
Hi again, John Harris, 7 Hillview Drive. I wanted to just talk about the lights. I wanted to give you commentary kind of on the current situation. And I really say this for the future parents that are going to have kids that are going to play sports, especially at the high school level, that are at BRS in the middle school. Because at the JV level, because of what Mr. Ramosi said about the new rules and the criteria, that we're kind of forced into this, our hands forced. So the JV games are starting at 7 o'clock. So, you know, you have to balance that all out. But regardless of the experience so far, is that, and I know the presentation, and there's the options that are on the table. But the current lights are less than stellar. I've heard fans from other towns say these are terrible. And the impact of the game, I know that can only be 25, 30 feet high with the porta wands, but it's blinding. You know, we had a game up in North Salem that has the 4-pole structure, and they have huge trees that are blocked behind it, massive trees. And it seemed like the lights were all on the field. It wasn't like, so I know we got to figure out the options, but I just really wanted to give you the current view, because if your kid plays varsity, you're not seeing the night games. Tonight there wasn't a night game, but if you came tonight at 7:30, you would have seen them in action. You know, I even have props. I have video from the experience. And actually last week on Thursday, it rained pretty hard. Almost, I don't know, close 3/4 of an inch of rain. You know, without the turf, we would have probably got canceled or whatever. That's a whole separate topic. But the lights themselves, I realized that the umbrella actually helps the fans see the game because you can block the brim because you're getting. And my daughter even said, "Yeah, we did a review of the game on Local Live, and she said it was hard to even follow the ball during the video of the game." I know there's a lot to figure out, but I just wanted to get a current view, especially for future parents. By the time that good lights get in, my girls will be moving on. But I just hope that whatever we can figure out, you know, to give folks that experience of playing a night game. I grew up in Connecticut and I grew up in the 80s and we played night games and it was great. My father was working. I was one of 5 kids. He was always able to get to the night games. Away games, he could never get to because he had to work. So it does afford an opportunity for your parents, your other siblings, aunts, uncles to come to the night games too. So there's that benefit. Thank you for your time.
Tom Shingler, 123 Great Oak Lane. So I do want to thank the board and the committees that worked on this so far. I was on the original facilities committee and then there was take 2. So I do appreciate how much time goes into this. And I think it's good to have this dialogue. I want to specifically speak about the lights. So I do have 2 daughters who are high school student athletes, one who's in 12th grade and one who's in 9th grade. So I think the benefit to my daughters will probably be minimal, if any, from this project. But I am thinking about the future student athletes that are going to be coming through our high school. And from my perspective, I want to address 3 specific issues with the lights. So the first is related to the current situation. I do have a daughter who plays JV field hockey. I would encourage anyone who's on the fence on this topic to go to the turf and see it for yourself when one of these games is going on. The situation is such that these lights are extremely loud. They're polluting. So we've got our kids, we're talking about turf. We have our kids breathing in diesel fumes. And they're not good light. So it's a safety issue. As I said, my daughter plays field hockey. The ball is rock hard. You need to be able to see the field. So that's a safety issue. So that on the turf, on the lights, that's one. The second is the track. So we run cross country, outdoor track, and indoor track. So indoor track, because we have no indoor facility, actually practices outside throughout the winter. And if you think about when the sun sets in the winter, these kids are running in the dark most of the time throughout the winter. So we have a member of our track team who's in the audience tonight. He can attest to this. So that's a safety issue with respect to the entire winter when we have these kids running in the dark. There are times when I pick up my daughter who's a high school senior and I literally cannot find her on the track. I'm trying to locate her running in the dark. So you've got those issues with the teams that are playing in the evening, in the fall, and the spring. I mentioned the field hockey. The other one is this related issue to the track. It's in the spring. It's the fact that we have lacrosse doing the same thing. So we have the same issue in the spring as we do in the fall. The final issue I want to bring up that hasn't been addressed is the board president alluded to this. All of these facilities are community facilities. They're not just for our students. They're mainly for our students in a lot of ways, but they're also for our entire community. And the track I see being used very regularly, mostly appropriately, sometimes inappropriately in terms of bikes and scooters, but it's mostly appropriate, and that's great to see. That's also a safety issue. I saw young adults. I was at the same game as John Harris last Thursday when we were amidst these diesel fumes watching this game for field hockey. We have adults that are walking the track at night. That's great. That's people out getting exercise. Those are everything from young adults to our senior citizens. They need to be able to see when they're out there. It's another reason that we need these lights, is to have it as a community resource. I think there's an aspect of this that can be addressed in terms of concerns about how long these lights are going to be up. My expectation is there could be a very reasonable time limit on when the lights are put out, whether it's 8 p.m. or something like that. There can be timing that can be set for when to turn off the lights. If we think about our JV games, they're generally done by 7:30, 8 p.m. But if you don't have lights, you can't have a game. So we can't continue to use lights that are the situation that we have. So I've covered these three main points. The one last point I want to bring up on health and safety that has not been addressed at all. In Pleasantville, we do not allow gas-powered leaf blowers. We have a rule on that. From the spring through the fall, you have to use an electric leaf blower. I'm supportive of that. This is the same concept with diesel on the diesel-powered lights. Think about young people running at full bore. Field hockey game, I'll use that as an example. That's a 60-minute game. We've got girls competing so hard, they're breathing in diesel fumes playing these games. That's a basic safety issue. So we're not going to allow leaf blowers that emit emissions like gas, but we're going to allow a diesel-powered set of lights for our children. That's not internally consistent. We need to have policies that are consistent. So I thank you for giving us the opportunity to express our points of view and look forward to continued dialogue on this.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Okay, two things that want to point out here. John and I used to run soccer for the recreational league. And I can tell you from personal experience that the amount that we use our fields, turning one of our existing turfs into a grass field, it is not going to work. We've had a particularly dry spell for the last, I think, 4 years where we really haven't had too much flooding. But before that, you can attest the first day of school was a monsoon. And it seemed like it rained every Friday, and those fields were completely unsafe and unusable, all of the grass fields. And we had to cancel most of the recreational season. I think at least half of it we canceled that year, moving kids around so that it wasn't the seventh grade, the U7s getting canceled every week. We would move them to the turf, and we would sub somebody else off the turf. So, we started this by talking about how it's student-centered and everything that we do has to be focused in on that lens. And I think in a perfect world, like, we would want to have all grass, but even the professional teams have more ability to let them rest and use them a lot less. So we have to balance that. It's going to be something that obviously that we're looking at as far as maintaining as much green space as possible while still providing enough facilities for our kids to play. The second thing I want to point out is that I think we're in a position where we're going to have lights one way or the other. And I totally appreciate what you're saying about the diesel powered generating lights. But I think based on what I'm hearing, and John knows this much more intimately than I do, we're in a situation where we just can't afford not to have some form of illumination, or we're going to be canceling games. And I think that's a real choice that we have to make if we're willing to start canceling, and which sports are getting canceled, which kids get to play, which ones don't get to play. I don't think that's an option for us. Said it correctly?
Yes.
Okay. With that, we'll move to timing and next steps.
So, to reiterate what we have decided so far, and this is an important slide, so I refer back to the timeline that we saw earlier in the presentation. So what we know at this point are still we have those whys, those questions. So at BRS, we need to reconfigure the exterior space to meet the various needs of all those different groups that participate on it. For STEAM, we need to enhance our buildings to provide that superior instruction that's going to provide for our children's futures. And for Fields and Lights, we need to improve the experience of our athletes and safely meet the needs of our teams with limited space. And we have a general idea as to how to accomplish those goals. We know that we need to expedite those important infrastructure improvements, and we're set up for a May vote on the Pleasantville Forward Together. What we're still working on includes which specific parts will go into each of the 3 sub-projects and how to group them together into separate bundles to give voters more options. The last piece is the financing. Once we know which parts will be included, we can then get pricing information back from our architects. We will then be able to share a projected capital project cost and a proposed borrowing schedule that fits most favorably into our debt schedule. So our next steps include a full committee meeting on the 9th, full CFC on the 9th with subcommittee time, after which I should get final recommendations on scope and details of the 3 projects. After that, we give the CFC recommendations with our input to the architects so they can produce a plan for the end of December. I will then have to give a recommendation to the Board of Education. So once we get the information from the subcommittees, we give that to the architects. They'll come back with a full plan. I would then present it to the Board of Education. And one of the themes that we started off with was communication. You're going to hear about this all along the way. And we have another Q&A slide. But I just want to make a comment. So like we've heard quite a few people come up here. And Dean, I don't know your last name, but you talked about our responsibility for being student-centered, which is, I mean, we're a school district. That's our function. That's why this whole place exists, to serve the kids. However, in our capital project title, you also see community guided. And this is a symbol. What we're doing right now is a symbol that, yes, we are student-centered, but we're also mindful that what makes Pleasantville is that it is a place where we encourage dads to come and play football here on the same turf or grass that we run a phys ed class or an athletic program. That's one of the things in the short time I've been here that is very stark and obvious to me. That we have a purpose, but look at all the different perspectives on turf. Look at all the different perspectives on our space use. We hear that. That's why you see this long process. So as we go through, I mentioned every board meeting, we'll give you updates at every board meetings. I have an email address. Email me. Give me a call if you have input. It doesn't just have to be at these forums. I have found our Board of Education to be highly responsive. Take advantage of that. That doesn't happen everywhere. So if you have friends that were not able to come to this forum, tell them to come to the next one. Tell them to email us. We will answer those questions. We will include your input. I was given information on the science of turf quality. So I've been reading more about infill than I ever have before. We will do that. So again, please take advantage of that. Thank you.
Well said. I think that's it. Just another question period. You're not limited to one of the individual projects. If there's anyone else that would like to speak. can come up now. If you don't feel comfortable coming up to the microphone, I will hang out. I can't speak for my other board members, but I will hang out afterwards for anybody that wishes to have a private conversation if they don't feel comfortable coming up. And as Dr. Latinsky said, we are generally available by email, by phone, around the town, at a football game, at a soccer game, at an art show, bake sale. Approach us. We want to have your input. We want to take all of these things into consideration. Again, we're all, I think, rowing in the same direction here. It's just how we get there. So with that, if there is no one else that has anything they'd like to share, I'm going to go ahead and end the community forum. Thank you everyone for attending. All the people live streaming at home, really appreciate you sticking with us this whole time. And really, again, appreciate the community engagement and everybody spending, a Monday evening with us tonight. So thank you.